Hello and good morning and welcome. I'm Greg.
And I'm John. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Oz by Drone. Great to be back with you again.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. And it's been a great week. It's been a very great week for me. I've got my aircraft back after the meeting of the tree. So that's a really good thing, but another story for another day.
And we'll just go on that for a minute. And they replaced the aircraft after the accident, Greg. So I believe you got a new machine.
They did. So they replaced the aircraft. That was good. I'd previously had the low noise props on it. Unfortunately, they gave me the standard ones back, but such is life.
Now, I know that we've got a segment later that people are going to introduce called Crashing with Style. You mightn't mind if I included yours in that today.
Oh, look, it was my intent to... We're going to talk about my crash. We're going to talk about a couple of crashes from iSpike and other people in the chat room. Maybe we can talk about your crashes as well. I don't know. Yeah, someone's telling me we've got audio lag. I don't know how or why that is, but I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to press the stop and start button to help the synchronization any, but YouTube is a little bit of fun, isn't it? So
yeah, it always is.
That is what it is. By the way, just a quick comment. We've got something new in the chat room today, Nightbot, which is going to be doing some stuff. I'm testing it out, and I just saw that he timed out Steve Mack. So apologies for that, Steve. You haven't done anything bad, and we'll sort this out later, okay? Anyway, let's get started. So before we do anything, what's happening with you this week, John?
Been a big week flying, and I must say I just love flying in the bush or the outback, I suppose for our international guests, the wilderness. Tom and I went out to do 2 surveys this week out in central New South Wales. So to give you an idea of that, we drove about 6 hours from our home base in Sydney. We had to do a volumetric cut and fill survey of a waste management facility, which is pretty easy. Only took us a couple of hours. And then we spent the next day doing a new development site. Now, I couldn't have picked a more fun day of flying. There was not a breath of wind, beautiful blue sky. We'd done all our flight plans, we were ready, and we set up our deck chairs, got the esky, non-alcoholic drinks, of course, and sat back in the shade and watched the Phantom fly 10 batteries to do this site, and then went home. It was just a great day out in the bush. And it reminds me that, flying in more regional remote areas is so much more fun than flying in city. I know some of the people that fly, in urban areas will agree with me. It's just so much less headache when you're out in the scrub, not a care in the world, no one around, not a soul, maybe an odd bird, but that was it. So It was a great week for us for flying. We loved it.
Good to hear, good to hear. So let's move on. People are saying the audio is a bit out of sync. Nothing I can do. Welcome to the wonderful world of YouTube and Telstra. Thank you to our sponsor, Telstra. We'd love to hear from you about getting internet that works. Yeah. But more of that later. On to the news.
Okay, big news things happening this week. First of all, what's really exciting is that company called Autel Robotics are going to go up against DJI over some patent issues. A trade war, in fact, it is. And they are going to apply through the patent office to actually prohibit DJI aircraft and drones being imported to the United States. Big deal. There's a link there on our site in the chat room, I believe, isn't it, Greg? The link to those various patents. But apparently they... the battery issue, a removable battery, and all sort of things. Some of these things, they might have had patents in there a long time ago. And you'll remember fondly that the wars between Apple and Samsung about swiping, who's allowed to use swiping technology. It will be expensive, but I think DJI will lawyer up pretty heavily to protect their market in the US. But who knows? China and America, man, it's going to happen. You know, there's going to be more than that in trade wars.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's been an interesting time. You have a look at what DJI and Autel are doing, and it's nothing different to, you know, Samsung and Apple. They're all going to fight to try and get as much turf as they can. But at the end of the day, it's not a war of attrition. Both companies will survive. You can't have just one company in the market. I think Autel's got a place, and DJI has got a place as well. Neither of them are going to, you know, have one up on the other.
The big beneficiary of competition like this is us. While the companies are competing in the price war, people have been commenting on the forums lately. DJI have just had a massive price hike. Not massive, I suppose, but they've hiked their prices for all sorts of things. And I think they are just basically so dominant in the market. And let's face it, if you are selling your batteries or your propellers and once everybody's got these airplanes, they want more, so just put the price up. They'll have to pay it. You know, you can't do without propellers. You get third-party ones, of course, but they're gonna benefit from it anyway. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Let's move on. So, second story of the day, UTM.
UTM. Now, this is interesting because it's an idea of having a corridor, if you like, a drone corridor amongst manned aircraft airspace. Now, this is not a new idea, but it's great to see some of the companies like New Air beginning that process, the regulatory process that's required. And what we'll see is, I think in the future, and again, we're using that term, UTM, that's unmanned traffic management or universal traffic management. They are looking for the future, if you like, of integration of unmanned vehicles and manned vehicles in the air. And the corridor idea is great because we have already in manned aircraft aviation, we have lots of corridors. We have light aircraft corridors for VFR traffic or you know, smaller aircraft traffic. We have IFR corridors, the heavy jets flying corridors along pathways. So why not do that with unmanned vehicles as well, have corridors for them to operate in? I think this came mostly from the military wanting to have their larger drones and unmanned vehicles having corridors. So we might see that benefit. It is exciting news that they're going to get some trials going now. So,
and the good thing also about this is that they've got some radar stuff in there. But let's just put up the information about that particular story. Can we put that up on the screen?
And a major milestone for the region's New Air Alliance as it builds the latest in test facilities for drones.
New Air has just signed 2 deals for phase 1 of a multi-million-dollar test corridor. The new Channel 9 says can be significant
conditions inside that corridor with radar tracking.
You know, in fact, I invited everybody to come in for a little opportunity to celebrate, frankly, that we're finally signing things, getting them in play. So I think it's very significant.
SRC's Griffin Sensors Division will install 9 radars, integrating into operations and installing the original 4, putting up 2 new ones before winter hits, and the remainder next spring. A contract is pending with Raytheon for a mobile system.
I think the community will take note of it. They know we've been talking about this for a while, but the fact that now we can say, yeah, they're under contract and the first installation, that first 12 months, is underway.
The governor's already committed $30 million of state money.
We'll leave it there, but certainly an interesting topic as well. And, you know, the fact that they've got the radar and all of this other intelligence there to go and start to really build a good corridor. It's really, it's a good investment, I think.
I think it is. I'd hope that more of these companies would bring it to Australia because, I mean, we've got so much wide open space here. Trialling that kind of equipment and you know, implementing here, one would think would be fairly easy. So we might see that too, hopefully, but good on them. Let's go with it.
Yeah. We'll just press the magic button on the stream and give it... Oh, no, it's coming and going. Let's press the button one more time and see if we can kick that off a little bit. Moving on to the next story. So, mind control.
Yes, my story about being married. It is actually about using AI, a form of telepathic chip in control of swarms, in fact. Yeah. I love these kind of things. Look, so there's a guy in a crazy hat, and whatever he's thinking is going to be obviously controlling. And look, wonderful. I mean, I just wish I could be there and watch all that stuff happen. Can you imagine talking about crashing with style? Can you imagine how many drones they crash while they got those hats on?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just waiting for the distraction of the phone call from the wife, and that's the excuse why you crashed.
Oh yeah, exactly. I know. Look,
It's interesting, and just the background to the
is.
story. So this particular technology is coming from the US military, coming from DARPA, the same people who invented the internet, the Advanced Research Projects Agency. So they've created a brain-computer interface that allows you to control everything from a swarm of drones to an advanced fighter jet using nothing but their thoughts and a special brain chip. So
Again, this has been developed over many years with the military. Like many things, and we're seeing that kind of proprietary technology being available now for universities to try. Once it would have been a guarded secret, but of course in fighter aeroplanes, single-seat fighter aeroplanes, modern ones, there's been a lot of that in terms of running checklists. It's pretty easy. One of the things you can do, which is a bit of fun, is to run a checklist or build a checklist app. So we're always using checklists when we fly. It's a pretty easy thing to respond to an electronic device, and we're seeing that a lot these days now. One time the checklist would come up electronic, you push a button to clear the check, and the system would monitor if you got the flap set correctly, is the certain controls or switches in order. The idea of moving that to a thought process where obviously your brain is giving off a signal, maybe it's just as simple as a happy signal and a sad signal. It might be that simple to roll off a checklist, but to control the aircraft in direction and all that sort of stuff, fascinating, wonderful.
yeah, absolutely. So next story we've got coming up is, and I've got to get faster at this, I was busy typing in the chat, politics. So what's all this about?
Well, I think this is a news story that came up the other day about 10 Dowling Street, and someone decided from a nearby park to swoop down in front of 10 Downing Street and buzz Theresa May's head, apparently. So, I don't know. Yeah,
And that's a great shot of a reaction, but
it is. I mean, it's not real smart, guys, I mean, look, there he is there. And it might not have been a political thing. He might have just thought, but, you'd have to say to yourself, well, if I'm going to get caught doing something stupid, this is where it's going to be. Look at the cops, huh? And they're shaking their heads at this guy. He's got the drone.
yeah,
And to be fair enough to them, you don't know that the aircraft wasn't carrying something, nasty. I mean, it's nasty enough if it falls on you, but don't do that stuff, guys. don't have that sort of spectacular crash.
all jokes aside, so the guy was released without charge, without any incident. So apparently, there was nothing malicious involved.
No, he was just an idiot.
He was just an idiot. The question that
allowed
I don't know is it a no-fly zone outside number 10 Downing Street? I would say probably. And if it's not, it should be. But,
Well, we're not there yet in Australia, to be quite clear. The only rule that he broke, which is universal, is he was 30 metres
from people.
From a person. It doesn't matter about the address. It doesn't matter whether you do it at my place or outside the Prime Minister's place. And the 30-metre rule is hard and fast. That's it. And that's enough.
Yeah. And going from there, we're going to have a look at some laser power.
Powering aircraft from the ground with a laser. Here we go.
So I thought
that's a better shot of me.
Dr. Evil there, I thought, he's the guy who likes the lasers. But ultimately, powering drones from a laser sounds pretty far-fetched. But again, it's another military story. And the Army's trying to develop drones that will charge themselves with lasers.
Yeah, look, it's a laser tether, basically. Laser energy is a great way to transmit energy through light. There's a long way to go with it, and it's going to happen. I don't see any problem with it at all in terms of managing this. One day, we may find space stations with huge solar arrays.
I think that's a brilliant idea for that type of tech. Absolutely. The only thing that scares me about it at the moment is that it'd have to be only used in a military scene where you're not going to have conventional aviation flying over the top.
Yeah, it does pose a risk, but again, that's got to be part of the
design.
UTM, the management and the design again of what's there. I mean, we've been flying around thunderstorms for years. Fly around a laser.
Yeah. Okay.
Depends on what you're doing, and it's the low energy laser, and obviously in a drone corridor, however it's going to work, they'll push the technology. But I think laser transmission of power will become a thing. It'll come in other forms before it comes to unmanned aerial vehicles.
But where it gets interesting is not only power, but also potentially data layers, because you can transfer network services over laser as well. So
just like an optical fiber
absolutely
cable, you can send massive amounts of data through laser energy, and we're going to see more of it. Yep, no problem.
And from there, we talked before about mind control, controlling swarms. Let's have a look at this video about a swarm of drones.
In this video, we will present fully autonomous multi-drone flights with a fleet of 30 quadcopters. They will fly in a confined area, avoid collisions with each other and with virtual obstacles.
Birds or fish control themselves by making decisions gathered from their neighbors, from local measurements and other individual decisions. Drones are our intelligent flying agents. When they are airborne, they make decisions based on the bio-inspired models that we have created. The uniqueness of our drone flock lies in the fact that they communicate with each other in the air constantly. Their flight is neither pre-programmed nor controlled by a central ground station.
Similarly to natural systems, they will form coherent groups, split and reunite around obstacles and turn collectively around walls. The challenge in this task is that the drones in the front will always have to inform the others at the touting at the wall.
The collective behavior, they quickly find a consensus on the direction they will be heading. After a short initial phase of hesitation, they find consensus and fly away smoothly.
So yeah, look, some interesting tech there, and I love the idea of the neural networks and AI coming together to make them self-aware. I think this has a big part to play in terms of UTMs, collision avoidance, all of that kind of stuff, and safety in general.
I think so too. I mean, it reminds us too that these quads are really just flying software. They're as good as the software.
Absolutely.
People talk about the dangers with AI and what it might be. Again, that's the challenge for AI, is to have that robust technology so that the software doesn't go pear-shaped. I think it's going to be another thing that this technology, unmanned aerial vehicles, will be able to do that's unique. Swarms again. So we're copying nature now. We do have formations of aircraft. You can have large formations of aircraft. The concept of a swarm is a far more advanced idea.
And just out of interest, have people heard of the term murmuration before?
I haven't heard of that, no.
Murmuration is actually the description of what happens of a flock of birds. You've seen birds flying around and making these beautiful patterns and so forth. That's called a murmuration. And it's something that I actually studied, believe it or not, in terms of organizations that become self-adaptive in a business sense. But I think it's got a lot of place as well in AI and aviation. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Sure.
So from there, we go to a clemency request. We got two more stories.
What we're looking at doing next is
two quick stories
James
here.
Now,
Let me get that up
submit
because
for
my screen
a
just
royal
gone blank. You
pardon,
go ahead, Greg.
which is essentially...
Let's just play that video one more time, sorry.
Yeah, good.
Coming.
What we're looking at doing next is James has decided to submit for a royal pardon, which is essentially just a request for clemency and mercy to King Norodom Sihamoni. Basically now it's not a legal question anymore. It's not about politics. This is just a humanitarian issue. We've got an elderly man in failing health, in a really difficult situation, really difficult position, and we're just asking for mercy so that we can bring him home. We just need him home.
Yeah, so that was a brief story on ABC News. It's about an Australian that was travelling in Cambodia, and he was, I believe he's a journalist, or he was doing a story of some sort, flying a drone over a political event, and he was charged with spying and convicted and sentenced to jail. So it's he's
hard to argue with that.
well, he was charged with spying, but by Australian standards, it'd be the same as, putting a drone up and photographing Bill Shorten.
I suppose so, but in defence of perhaps the people who see it as spying, and that sounds like a heavy word, a heavy thing. But of course, what's going to happen to his footage is going to be published, obviously, and so he is displaying or broadcasting, and was there as a journalist to broadcast something that perhaps he didn't have permission to. And look, flying, be careful when you go to other countries, guys, and you're going to fly. Make sure you're very clear about where you can fly there. You don't have necessarily the same sort of apps, same sort of access to aviation data. Just go, when you're going to go anywhere at all and take your airplane, be very clear about it. And if there's any doubt, leave it with customs when you arrive and get it on the way out again. Don't risk
Absolutely.
it. Don't risk it.
Absolutely. And our last one for the day.
Yes, Little Ripper. Good on him. Got an award here. A life-saving drone developed by the Westpac Rescue and Little Ripper Group. It's been recognised by the Australian Information Industry Association for the annual awards. Look at this.
Yeah, so it's a great Australian story. Obviously we've got a lot more coastline that's, got to be patrolled and manned and so forth in a lot of places. And,
yeah, that's right. And one thing's great, Greg, that we noticed when we went to the Canberra conference, in terms of public acceptance of aircraft flying around and what they're doing. No one seems to have a problem with these machines flying around the beaches here, because they're looking for sharks, they're saving lives. Everyone can see the real benefit in having drones working at our beaches and keeping people safe. And that's great. That's what is pushing one of the BVLOS agendas here is from Little Ripper. They want BVLOS, limited BVLOS radio range line of sight. And they might be getting it soon.
Yeah. So, for example, you've got a controller at one particular location. You've got towers up and down the beach.
Yep.
Who might be in radio communication or telephone communication with the pilot. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And let's hope it does come through.
Yep, corridors will happen there too. We'll have beach corridors for them so that it'll keep manned aircraft clear of where the aircraft have got to operate.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the news today. And we mentioned before that we're going to be talking about crashing with style.
Yeah, I love it.
And I thank you for that title. It was a beautiful title.
I can't think of a better one, because, there are crashes and there are crashes. There are the ones that we call dumb thumbing. Now, dumb thumbing is a radio control pilot's term where you are just doing an inverted pass, over the runway low, and you mean to push forward and you pull back and you fly into the ground. So that's dumb thumbing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get that kind of crash with style.
Yeah.
Others are much more spectacular. I think you've got a clip of one or a shot of one, haven't you?
I have. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to talk about not just crashing with style, but also how to prevent it and how to be smarter and safer. So I've got a bunch of different types of crashes that we'll kind of talk about. But before we do that, let's have a look at a video of one that happened recently. Bit of the buffering again. So what do you do to prevent that exact type of crash? Now, if we just wait for the footage, it'll continue and we'll see it again in a couple of moments. But the drone in this particular case, it lost GPS signal. That was the reason for the crash. And then the aircraft, according to the report, drifted by itself into the wall of the building.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. What do you do when you lose GPS?
Well, that it really starts on the ground in terms of, because I would have guessed that the GPS loss wouldn't have been the first concern. My first concern in flying that environment, and you're looking for reasons not to crash, is radio interference. So anytime that you're working around a building like that, you can count on having so much Wi-Fi energy, and look, it was an airplane that used the same frequency spectrum, you're going to have problems. Now 5.8 is not even as clear anymore. So that's going to be your biggest problem. And remember, even though you've got GPS there, the GPS might be dodgy, Wi-Fi can be a real problem as well. So let's go put a list of the risks together. GPS is one when you're working around buildings for sure. Now, I watching that made me shudder a bit because I actually had that experience myself. And we were working in the clock tower video, which we've showed here before. I had 2 observers working with me, and I was working pretty hard on the screen today, but I had 2 people watching. I had a lot of restriction. Anyway, the winds picked up, the GPS signal dropped, and the aircraft started to drift towards a building. Now, we just switched straight to manual mode. You don't watch it. You don't try and fight the GPS. You go straight to ADI mode and recover the aircraft if you can. And you've really got to keep that. So, okay, here we go. Not crashing 101 start with is fly in ADI mode regularly. Get used to mitigating that risk of losing the GPS. Now, that's just one. That's just one.
Can I just add one other part to that is, so ADI mode is going to disconnect the GPS essentially. So that's happy days.
It's happy days.
But depending on where the wind's coming from, it's obviously going to be a force that you've got to counteract. So this is only my thinking. Do you fly it first away from altitude? What would you do first?
GPS. The aircraft's going to handle that gust. So let's put the weather one aside for a moment, because you can dumb thumb an airplane once you're ADI moding as well if you're flying around buildings. What we do, and this is as a commercial operator, this is what we do. We consider the most likely risk first. So a building, and they're both high up there, but Wi-Fi is the first one. So guess what we do? We turn on our iPads and iPhones and we look at how much Wi-Fi there. It'll basically fill your whole screen. You know, if it's a busy place. What you can do then is you can actually fly in ADI mode deliberately in that location. So that's an unusual one perhaps to suggest, but if it's safe and you've got no people around the problem and you launch in ADI mode comfortably, where you're really focused, you're not expecting anything, you can monitor the signal. We do that to test cell towers. So if we've got to go and do an inspection on a tower where there is a problem, we don't fly it in GPS mode first. We actually fly it because guess what? You can tell straight away if you have got interference. If the GPS is playing up as well, you don't know which one is the problem. So, but coming back to simplify it for everyone, both of those risks are high risks. If there's, there's birds, weather, there's all the other things. Weather shouldn't be a problem because you know what the weather is. You've looked at the weather. You've anticipated what might be there. So you might get a gust, but
let me pull you back to the simple question, keeping it simple for dummies like me. If there's nothing above, do you go up as quick as you can?
Yeah.
Or do you try and counteract the wind first? Depends on where you are, or...
In that situation, if he'd elevated the airplane quickly in ADI mode, as quickly as possible, gone for height, then that's the first thing. So we have an emergency procedures practice, which is go for height. So what people try and do is they see the airplane drifting towards a building and they start thumbing the airplane or trying to get away. Just go for the thrust. Go straight for the thrust and get as high as you can. Because you know what? If you keep going up and you keep going up, you'll sort out the rest later. But that's not a natural thing for people to want to do. When they're worried about their aircraft or losing control, they don't think. But altitude is everything. And guess what? The GPS will re-engage once it's got a clearance above the building. And you don't want to hit the building. Once you're above the building, you can't hit it. And you can fly to another place, perhaps manually. So perhaps that's the main one here, to mitigate crashing with style in that situation. Always go for the power, guys. Get the airplane going up as fast as you can. Okay. And you'll be fine.
So let's go into a couple of others. So loss of GPS, compass interference, pretty much the same recovery process?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
ADI mode, go up and get out of trouble.
Get out of trouble. Go for altitude. Yeah.
Okay.
And practice.
Practice
in ADI mode. Don't, every time you go out and you go and you might have a couple of batteries of flying or a battery of flying, just say, I'm going to bring the airplane home, perhaps bring it close if you're not comfortable. Get to within 30 meters, switch to ADI mode, land the airplane yourself. in ADI mode without GPS. Just do it, and you'll benefit from the skill. But most crashes happen because pilots don't have the skill in ADI mode. I see a comment from Bob. Are people really that inept at flying ADI mode? In my experience, Bob, they are, and they get lazy. I've got guys who fly all the time who don't practice ADI mode. Then when they come for their flight checks, oh, okay, I've got to do this again. This never happens, but the day it does happen, you need to be able to do it.
It's happened to me, and I was flying out over water, and I had nothing to worry about, but it was good experience for me. That was the first time it happened unscheduled. I'd flown in ADI mode many times, but it was good to get it back in that situation.
Just finally, to clarify the systems that you're looking at there, because we're bordering on it here. The aeroplane is still stabilised in ADI mode. ADI mode is only the absence of GPS. Remember that the barometer is still working and the stabiliser, the IMU, is still working. If you have a barometer failure or an IMU failure, only a super thumbs will get you out of it. The airplane is completely going to try to destroy itself.
And the compass is disconnected in ADI?
No, not necessarily. The compass still works too. ADI mode really primarily means that we're in GPS. You will find if your compass needs calibrating and you're flying, the airplane will still attempt to maintain position using GPS, if it will. But the GPS is such an important part of keeping the airplane, navigating the airplane. It doesn't stabilize it. The GPS does not stabilize the airplane; it navigates it.
Yeah. Okay. What else have we got? Fuel, pretty obvious one.
Oh yeah, that happens. You see heaps of those. You can drive through people cutting their fuel margins too low. We had a problem the other day if you're flying at a place where the landing field where you're taking off from might become a problem. So a dog park is a classic. If you're flying at a park where there's dogs, always land with 5 minutes of extra fuel. I know it sounds like a lot, but if you're on your own and you have to manage that risk, you need to go somewhere else or walk to another area, follow the airplane, walk to an area where the dogs are not going nuts. But trust me, the amount of times the dogs start chasing our aircraft and going ballistic. Many times. Yeah, all the time. Guess what? When the fuel gets low, guys, it's a problem. If you've got fuel, the dog's not a problem. You just stay away. You can fly. You can stay away from it. You
can walk the dog, but that's another story for another day.
You can walk the dog, but have fuel. Think about your fuel. So here's a little tip for that, not crashing 101, that you can get used to. When you're about to depart, look at your watch, take a note of the time that you're about to depart and say, okay, I've got about 25 minutes. This is going to be a 20-minute flight. I'm going to land about this time. Now, if you set an alarm on your watch, that's all very, very good. A lot of radio control guys have timers on their transmitters. We haven't seen those. We've got such good telemetry with the modern quadcopters that we're using. But you should have in your mind that kind of thing. Because guess what? If you're in ADI mode without telemetry for some reason, guess what gauge you've got left? If you've got no screen, right, and everything else has gone blank, and the airplane might be in a flyaway situation, you can look at your watch and you can say, I know that at this time the airplane's going to be on the ground somewhere. Discard that. Always keep an eye on the time that you depart. Expect the airplane to be exhausted.
Up and down a sporting field, I was racing with a RC car down below and having fun. I was in sports mode. It was all good. People came up the other end of the field, and then we started doing the short end. And, I had obstacles at either end. Now, for visual enjoyment, I didn't want to be flying up there where you couldn't see the RC car and how far away I was from it. So my thinking was, I'm going to fly down here right next to the car and I'm going to pull up. My mistake, and this is a topic that was Greg Hilton and I were talking about recently. I'm going that way and I need to quickly go that way. I can't do both at the same time at the same efficiency.
No, that doesn't work.
That was my mistake. It was a human error, but one that I've learned.
Yep. It's about margins too, Greg, because when you're racing a car and you set yourself up, if the car's racing between two particular points, then you predetermine where you're going to fly to each time. Again, planning is everything in that kind of thing. And so I would, when we're doing film work, if you've got a shot to do where you need to maneuver the airplane quickly, perhaps following a car, you do it without the car first, and you just say you slowly fly it. Look at what your margins are. Okay, when we get to that tree, we're going to be stopping. Anyway, look, in hindsight, it's a great thing, but you know what? It's a great way to learn, and very much so, you learn your lessons safely. So good on you.
And I've got the new aircraft, and as I mentioned before, I just want to share with people the props on it, and you've got the quiet props, and you send it away for repair. Guess what? You're going to get the non-quiet props back. That's point number one. Point number two, DJI Care Refresh doesn't cover batteries, and considering batteries was about 50% of the repair cost if I didn't have refresh, that's an interesting topic. So I actually did the math, and I said, okay, if it's about $250 repair and about 250 for the battery, Australian, rough numbers, and my Care Refresh over 2 years plus one recovery, I spent $600. I'm behind. I've got to crash my aircraft again to get ahead.
Well, don't hold your breath.
Look,
I mean,
look, it swings and roundabouts, right? The cost of repair in this case for one crash with DJI Care Refresh over 2 years is not worth it. You've got to crash more frequently. Not that any of us want to, but just sharing that kind of information.
Yeah. We had a talk about this with some of the guys that fly with me, and we decided that probably the cheapest way to do this was not to crash.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds like a silly thing to say. We have all these great sayings in aviation. If you think safety is expensive, try having an accident. All of those kind of things ring true. The idea of insurance and having an aircraft replaceable, I think in DJI Care Refresh, not for crashing point of view, but for replacing an aircraft that perhaps needs is beyond warranty or whatever other reason, mishandled. Traveling on the airlines, it's broken, and you get that kind of. So, I think it's probably a reasonable price to pay, but I don't refer to it as a way of the last thing I want is someone saying, well, I might just fly over here really fast because if I do crash, I can get another airplane.
I'm not suggesting that. You've still got to pay the excess, but I'm just doing the math, and I'm definitely not advocating unsafe practices.
That's right. Well, no, exactly. But, that's a very human thing. When we've got a second, another option, you can't help it. But mind you, and the pilot that was flying with me, who didn't have DJI, who caught a wire on a roof inspection. We're doing a roof inspection, very tricky job, caught a wire, but the margins weren't big enough for the wire. He admits he accepted it, and he said, "No, I'll just fly more carefully." And that was the cost of the accident for him, was that his skill set was improved. I say to people when we're talking about crashing with style, the ultimate way of crashing with style is, of course, you might have lost the airframe and no one was hurt, and that's a fantastic thing because you were being careful. But you are a better pilot, and that is money in the bank. Don't ever forget that. If you become a better pilot from the mistakes you make. Now, if you say, that's not my fault, something went wrong or what, and you don't accept it, then you lose the money. You know what I mean by that? You actually lose the experience. Accept your mistakes, think them through, and put that in the bank. Don't worry about the money, because you know what, you'll be flying more expensive airplanes one day, hopefully, and then it will be good money in the bank to be a better pilot.
Absolutely. So before we speak about the last couple of things, Jeff Sills, if you're watching at the moment, you're the next guest coming up, and we'd love for you to join the rendezvous now. I'm trying to send you an email. So apologies for that. But John, do you want to talk about the last, say, 2 or 3 items? So birds, nature, rain and wind, and any other aircraft. Yeah,
birds have been a problem lately here. We've got most of the company guys are putting strobes on. Although I had Martin was out the other day and suggested to me that he couldn't stop the birds with strobes, and he's got some really high-tech strobes on the airplane. Strobes have been used to mitigate bird risks in manned aircraft, and what you do is you have flashing landing lights. So if you're ever watching a heavy jet approaching, and you see the landing lights pulsing like this, you know that that's for bird risk. And so there's been a lot of study on it. I tell you what, though, we had birds this week out at the tip. They were very curious. They need to be considered. So if you're flying in an environment where you can have a bird strike, first thing you can think about is prop guards. And we actually haven't proved anything here, but we think that prop guards might alleviate the bird strike problem, because if the bird touches the prop guard rather than collecting the prop, it might decide not to get any closer. We don't know yet, so we're going to try that. But strobes and prop guards. But remember, guys, if you are flying around with people below and there are birds around, give it away, because a bird strike will just bring the airplane down. In most cases.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do this. I'm waiting on Jeff to join. So hint, Jeff, if you're watching at the moment, I just sent you an email. It's the same way to join as always. But in the meantime, I'm going to play our Oz videos now. John's going to disappear very, very shortly. And what I'll do, I'll get Greg Hilton to join. Greg, if you could join now, that would be awesome. What else have we got here? So actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. Just before John goes, a quick little talk about next week. Next week, we're going to have ask you to send in some videos of some orbits, right? So last week we asked you to send in some photos of some sunsets, and we've got a few of them we're going to share today. Next week, if you could have a look at your collection and any orbits that you've got, we're going to have a look at some orbit videos next week. I've already got one, and there's Jeff now waiting to come in. So that was good tap dancing while we were waiting for him. That worked well. Okay, so John, I'll bid you farewell. You've got to go and do some music things today. So go and sorry, I got that wrong. You've got to go and make some noise.
Make some noise.
Bang some things.
Hey, there's the boys. All right, I'll say goodbye, everybody. Hang in there. We've got lots more stuff coming up on the show. So I'll see you next week.
See you, John.
See ya.
Okay. And from there, let me go and press the magic button. So we're getting Jeff into the show right now, and that'll take a few more minutes. So let us go and do that. And there we go. Jeff Sills.
Hello.
We've got some echo on you. I'll just get that mix minused. Okay, how you doing?
Okay. Not too bad. Enjoying coming on to a show and not having to have a huge news sheet ready.
Just for those who watch us and who may not know, Jeff is the guy who goes and compiles all of our news, and he does a great job at that. And I want to thank you very, very much for that, Jeff. It makes it so much easier putting this show together.
There is just so much stuff that comes in that I dig through that I guess I can't thank you guys enough for giving me the opportunity to do this, because I have learned such an amazing amount of information about this whole drone community environment through doing this, that it's been exciting, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as we move on, let me just find, which channel is Greg on the mixer? Down below. Anyway, we'll find that in a minute. I just want to turn your volume down, Greg. I can just hear you breathing in the background. You're a deep breather. Anyway, moving on. There we go. He's going to mute himself now, I hope. Okay. So, Jeff, tell me a little bit about the history of the aircraft that you're repairing. And for those who don't know, Jeff is repairing some aircraft. Tell me the history. There's 2 aircraft involved.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll start this preface with the fact that I own a Phantom 3 Standard, and 3 months into owning it, it crashed, and I got to go through the whole DJI formula thing to get it repaired. It took about 3 months. It got shipped back and forth between here and California about 5 times until finally they agreed, okay, fine, we'll just replace it. But it was a very frustrating and very time-consuming issue. Afterwards, I told myself that if I ever had another problem with my drone, I would probably learn how to fix it myself. But I never really had the opportunity to do that. And then this fell into my lap, which was Ken's drone. It was sort of a surprise that I had the opportunity to get this drone. And initially, the idea was that it was going to be like a trophy, that you would just have it and it would sit up on the shelf and you could look at it and it'd be great. But it kept bugging me the fact that Ken flew it. It works. There's no reason why it can't fly. And so I decided to start looking into repairing it and found that it was perfectly feasible to restore this thing to flight. And I've been very lucky with the people that follow Ken's channel. There was a lot of support to see this drone come back into service. They've donated funds that have been applied to get all of the parts, which I got everything from screw kits to cables to LED covers to
LED covers. I lost one. I'll see if I can find it in the park where I crashed my drone. But anyway.
Well, if you need one extra, there was actually one still on this drone.
Yeah.
I'll just send you the extra one that I got right here on top.
No, mine's already been fixed now. But so that's one drone. And what's the other one that you're working on?
The other one was so when I got this from Ken, and I started working on it, I watched a video that Chris Rollins did where he was talking about his new Mavic 2. And when he said that he couldn't do a comparison video between the Mavic 2 and the Mavic Pro, he then held up this thing, right? Which was his Mavic Pro. I went back and found the video where he actually crashed it. And so I just reached out to him. I asked him, if he had any inclination to allow me to try to return it to service as well. He thought it was a great idea and shipped me the drone. And so this is more of a long-term project. The Phantom 4 is what I'm really focused on at the moment.
Yeah.
But at a later date, you guys can see this thing. This is the top. I finally got the top off of it. But the gimbal's gone. The fan is, well, that's part of what was the fan. The power jack's gone. The compass is disconnected. But oddly enough, everything inside, the main logic board and a lot of the components are not damaged, which tells me that there is a possibility that could see life again.
Absolutely. Look, I'll just ask you, we're running very behind today, so let me ask you just one more question. What's the biggest challenges you've been having with the repair process? And the reverse, are parts of it easier than you thought of? Both sides of the coin.
Honestly, I think one of the things that was most difficult was finding the parts that DJI doesn't just readily make available. That had to be very creative. For instance, as an example, on Ken's drone, this vertical arm, which is what mounts the camera directly underneath the drone, was obliterated. I mean, it was gone. And so DJI doesn't sell the back cover. They don't sell the arms. And one thing that they definitely don't sell is the ESC board.
Yeah.
So I had to hunt through.
But this was this is the ESC board for the motor for the gimbal.
Yeah, it's the ESC board that controls the 3 gimbal motors that balance the camera.
By the way, I just love what I just saw from Ken there. He's talking about building a Phavic, P-H-A-V-I-C.
Well, Ken's given me the moniker of the Fred Sanford of drones now, because I've taken on this salvage role. So
come on, you could be Tim the Toolman Taylor and make it bigger and beefier and stronger.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
More power. Yeah, definitely. Well, honestly, if you see the tribute videos that I've done for these two drones, you'll understand that there's a deep passion in my heart for both of them. This particular drone here has filmed some of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. Ken is an artist with this drone.
Yeah.
And this drone's been in places that you can't fly anymore. It flew the St. Louis Arch. You can't go there anymore. It flew the rockets at Huntington. You can't go there anymore. I mean, it deserves to be preserved.
Speaking of places you can't go anymore, one place Ken can go with his new drone is to Australia. And I just want to share publicly that Ken has made a promise and a commitment to me. And that promise is that if I can get him a piece of paper from CASA that says he can fly here with his FAA license, then he's going to actually apply for that passport within 7 days. So thanks for that commitment, Ken. But anyway...
I guess the advice I would give to people is that don't be intimidated by repairing your drone. There's a lot of self-help videos out there. There's a lot of resources.
And just let me say, iSpike, who is not necessarily a tech guy, he's done a couple of repairs on his Mavic. This relates to the crashing with style that we were talking about before. He had 2 incidents where he crashed his drone, and they were both related to interference and the drone going and running into the side of a stationary object. So the advice we said before, ADI mode and go up, that's how to prevent it. But if you've already done it, give it a go. It's a lot of fun.
I was very impressed with Spike's work on his drone. I thought that was top notch, and I loved watching the video and listening to his perspective of repairing it. I thought that was great. He has a very unique way of looking at things, and it is a challenge. I mean, it really is. But if you believe in what you're doing and you feel that it's something that's within your capabilities, the resources are there. Yeah. It's not impossible.
Speaking of a challenge, Greg, we've got Greg Hilton sitting in standby, and he has got some questions for us. And as we speak right now, it is time for Stump the Yank.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for Stump the Yank. And today we're here with your host, Greg Hilton. And just at that exact time, Greg Hilton is frozen on the screen. So thanks to our sponsors from Telstra for providing the wonderful internet service that you do. Are you there, Greg?
He may have muted because he...
I muted him here. Are you there, Greg? No, he's disconnected.
Okay.
After that awesome intro. Okay. Let's do this. So we're going to go to the sunset photos, and we'll see if we got time for Stump the Yank in a couple of moments. Oh, here's Greg back. So let's see if we can put him up on screen. Are you there, Greg?
Yes, mate. I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everybody.
Glad to see you, sir.
So for those who don't know, Greg is the guy who puts together the Explore Australia Oz videos, and he does a great job of that, collating all of the greatest stuff from the week. But he's also a true blue great Aussie, and we thought let's have him in to be our Tony Barber. And for those who are from another part of the world and don't know who Tony Barber is, bad luck. So let's get started with the first question. Go for it, Greg.
Yeah, righto, Jeff. What is a rip snorter? Is it a wombat with a cold? Tearing up your hanky when your team loses a game? Is it a great game of footy? Or is it a disgusting, flu-ridden person on a bus? What is a rip snorter?
I am going to go with the third option.
A great game of footy? Correct.
Yes.
Woohoo! That's one. I wish I had the applause button. I'll have to get that for next time we do this. But congratulations, you got that one correct. And the second question?
What does Ridgy-Didge mean? Is it the name of an Aboriginal didgeridoo band? The top of the hill where Aborigines traditional play ceremonial didgeridoos? I'm telling you something straight up and it's correct. A person who can't play the didgeridoo. What is Ridgy-Didge?
I'm going to go with option number 2 on that one.
That's the top of the hill. Nah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you something straight up and it's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
What is a
number 3.
brown-eyed mullet? Is it a species of fish? A turd floating in the sea? A term used for a glass size of beer? Or pointing your naked bum out the window of a travelling car? What is a brown-eyed mullet?
Oh, dear Lord. The choices are just priceless. I'm going to go with the beer option, just to start with that.
Nah, it's a floating turd in the sea. That's a brown-eyed mullet.
Okay.
So welcome to Australia, and there's a little bit of our slang. Thank you for those questions, Greg. And thank you for joining us, Jeff. It's been great having you here, and we wish you well with the continuing repair job on the drones, and we look forward to hearing more about it in days and weeks to come.
I'm going to be posting videos as I continue going through these, and there's a good chance that the frame of this one is going to be swapped out here very soon.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Good luck with it, Jeff.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
And now it's time for our Oz videos, Come Down Under, Explore Australia videos. So let's have a look at that. So this week we'll get Greg to do a little bit of narration about some of this, both in terms of the videos where they are.
This first one's the Great Ocean Road and the 12 Apostles down in Melbourne. It's shot on a DJI Phantom 3. And after translating the name from Japanese back to English, it's Yanhua. Y-U-A-N-H-W-A. Nice flying. So the Phantom 3s are still very, very competitive in the image markets.
Yeah, and the 12 Apostles, that particular location used to be previously known as the Sow and Piglets, something that I didn't know before.
Yeah, and Lockhart George is down there as well.
Yeah.
Very nice stuff. I've seen a lot of videos of this area, and this one was a bit exceptional. She's not hanging around in tripod mode either. She's flying.
Yeah. Just a reminder, please do check out the channels where these videos are from. You can find links to the channels in the description. Also, we do put up a separate video on Explore Australia, and you'll be able to click on the links to the channel in there very easily as you watch that replay.
Good stuff. This is Somerset Dam, that's up here near us. We have a 2-dam system to supply water to Brisbane. This is the top dam called Somerset Dam. The lower dam is Wivenhoe, which is really a reservoir, but you can fish and boat in this particular dam if you go to the ranges and get a licence permit, which I believe is quite expensive. But freshwater fish is not my flavour at all. But there's shots here. If you watch the original video, this is about 10 and 12 minutes long, and it's very well done.
Any comments about the cinematography and the photography as a former professional TV cameraman?
Yeah, look, see, that's great composure. It's terrific composition. That is. It's quite nice. There's a lot of nice stuff in this. That just drags your eye off down with the river onto the distance, and yeah, that's quite nice. If it looks good, it is. If it doesn't, it isn't. There's the Blue Mountains again.
I love the Blue Mountains.
Josh.
Don't sound like that. Again, it's beautiful.
Oh, you don't know how many Blue Mountain videos I've seen.
Yeah.
And Phantom 4, this is quite nice stuff, this.
The Blue Mountains, just for people who don't know Australia, it's named that way just because of the blue haze, particularly you see it there on the left. That's the reason for the naming of it. It's also famous for a place called Scenic World, where they've got the world's steepest railway, and it goes at 52 degrees. It used to originally be used to get materials up and down and in and out of the coal mine, but subsequently it's now used for tourism purposes.
That blue haze, by the way, that's eucalyptus oil in the air from the eucalypt trees. And when this place catches on fire in a hot summer, believe me, that eucalypt oil, it makes everything catch fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is quite a nice shot, this one. He hand flew that.
I'm just seeing in the chat, Mark Coquio, that, oh, we'll come back to you, Mark.
Aratula region, this is about 50 clicks due west of the Cold Coast. Quite a nice little place in here. And this is on a DJI Spark. And I've noticed something here, that Spark flyers are pretty good at putting the drone in between trees and tight obstacles, whereas the Mavic guys, they've got longer legs with the probs hanging off the end of it, and they're not quite sure what they can get through.
Yeah.
But the Spark being a bit smaller, you can stick it in anywhere you like.
Yeah.
As you'll see in a moment where he does fly in between the trees. They're quite nice stuff. Good area.
So
There's some wonderful national parks.
This region
around
has a
there.
population of 505 people, so a particularly small area, originally known as Carter's Gate, but the name was changed to reflect the name of the railway station in that location. And Mark, if just a quick one, Mark Coquio there, we're going to next week possibly have a FPV feature, so stick around next week. We're going to have a look at some FPV flying next week.
It's a classic example of what I was talking about.
Yeah, the sparks flying through those holes there, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you'd pull that off with a Mavic.
No. Well, you could, but more challenging.
Yeah, millimetre accurate flying. But yeah, that was a nice shot. Good tilt down too on the way through, and the geometry of those rocks at the bottom there sort of, it really pulls your eye in. Yeah. This is the old Bando. Yeah, this is in Western Australia. I did make a note where it was, but I haven't got it on my sheet here with me, but these guys are awesome.
So this one is by Cruises FPV.
Yes. I like the way he goes racing down a corridor and there's a doorway and just turns straight into it. It's unbelievable.
Just me watching this, the first time I looked at it, you know, you've got to have this 3D map of the entire location in your head to work out where on earth you're going, because, you know, you've got to have the right window every time. You know, people just look at this and they see the footage and think, yeah, it looks really cool, but the kind of mental gymnastics you've got to do to put it together is pretty amazing.
I'll bet they spend about a month or two getting this together.
Mark, how long do you reckon it would take to prepare and do this? Just out of interest.
Just walk into a doorway. From memory, I think this is about 60 clicks northwest of Perth City.
Yeah,
across
I
the
had a
top
look
of
at
the
their
roof.
I had a look at their video description. It didn't have anything saying where it was. All I know is it's in Western Australia.
I googled the name off the end of the church, at the end of the school.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Good stuff, boys.
So that's the end of our Explore Australia. We've got next week, we're going to do a little bit of FPV corner for something a little bit different. I want to thank everyone for being here today. That's all we've got time for. We've got a few announcements at the end just to wrap up the show. Let me put them on the screen. I'm just looking at the chat before we do. Of flying once you found location, a good day of flying. How they can fly without crashing into anything. Wow, yeah, it is really difficult. I think they crash a lot. Yes, probably. How big is the race drone? Don't know their particular one, but you do need some good reflexes. So anyway, that's all we've got time for. Let me go through our quick announcements. Number one, please do subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. And if you could like this video, if you do actually like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to. You can press the thumbs down if you want to, but it'd be nice if you didn't. Moving on from that, Facebook, please do go to our Facebook page, like that, subscribe to it, or Twitter, whichever you prefer. What's your favorite social media? If you've got anything that you want to send to us, 5/127 Princess Highway, Sylvania, New South Wales 2224. Just a reminder again about next week, the viewer videos. If you could send in something that is a look at some orbiting, that would be really, really cool. That's our competition for next week. And we've got one more thing that we didn't do yet that I've got to quickly do now. There's 4 photos from one guy, section 4. something. Let's just quickly have a look at these. These were photos from last week where we asked people to send in some sunsets. And this first one was from Gary Reed. And we'll have a look at his 2nd, 3rd and 4th photos. Beautiful, beautiful photos. And we've also had someone who sent one in, Chris Elwell. Now, my ask to both of you, we only had 2 submissions and I couldn't pick between them. They were both good. We had 5 photos there. If those gentlemen want to send me their address, the prize was a tube of Vegemite, which a non-Australian may think of as a booby prize, but have some fun with it anyway. Aussies do love it, believe it or not. And a reminder again, next week, please, if you've got some video footage of some orbiting, send that in. We'll have a look at that next time as well. So that's all we've got time for now. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.